Now that's how you battle back in a series. From now on, that's how you battle back in a series. Let's have a mound visit. Let's go O's! What's going on, Birdland? Baltimore Bobs here, and welcome to the Baltimore Bobs YouTube channel where we discuss all things Baltimore Orioles. I'm Bobst, and I'll be your tour guide in this here episode. And if you were wondering, no, I'm not mad at all. I just thought that that'd be a real fun intro, a little bad boys action for you. Just thought it was appropriate, if you will. But how about them stinking Orioles, baby? 5-4, and they prevent the sweep. They keep the streak alive at 76, and you cannot be more impressed with how they stinking battled from beginning to end. So, before we get into anything else, I want to go ahead and have a tip of the cap to my man, Dean Kremer. Dean Kremer goes 7 innings, 6 hits, 2 earned runs, 5 Ks, and 2 walks, and he pitched an absolute gem. I mean, I'm not going to lie, he got a lot of great defensive plays behind him, but when it came down to it, my man was able to get out of innings and keep the Birds on top, and you could not ask for him to pitch a better baseball game than what he did tonight. You know, you're down 0-2, you're in a huge spot because you haven't been swept in 75 series straight. It's like 240 games, and the Birds and Brandon Hyde ask you to take that hill and make something happen, and that is exactly what Dean Kremer did. I've been talking this whole time about how this series we've been taking to school. You know, the Houston Astros are the teachers, and we're the students. And one day we're going to be the teachers, but right now we're the students, and they're teaching us. They're teaching us some hard lessons. Well, it looks like the Birds went to the dean's office, and they went ahead and got the dean involved because he came in there and just completely made it stinking happen. So, once again, tip of the cap to you, Mr. Dean. You pitched a phenomenal game, sir, and I thank you for your service. So, let's get into the Baltimore Orioles hitting. So let's go ahead and get into the Orioles hitters. So Adley Rutschman went 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs, including that leadoff home run. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Gunnar Henderson went 0 for. Anthony Santander went 0 for. Ryan O'Hearn went 1 for 3. Ryan McKenna pinch run for Ryan O'Hearn in one of the later innings. We'll talk about how big of a spot that was here in a second. And then Ryan Mountcastle goes 1 for 3. Adam Frazier goes 1 for 3. Austin Hayes goes 0 for 3. Oh, and I forgot. Ryan Mountcastle's 1 for 3 was a stinking frozen rope just over the indent of the left field wall. I mean, he basically took out the stinking cameraman and the camera. Just a stinking, he smoked that ball. Anyway, I digress. Austin Hayes goes 0 for 3. Ramon Urias goes 1 for 3 with a triple. And James McCann had another really good game behind the plate and at the plate. He goes 2 for 3 with an RBI and a run himself. And James McCann, man, you got to give it up to him. His bat is kind of coming alive here lately, and he's been calling such good baseball games behind the plate that I think Brandon Hyde is trying to get him a little bit more time in there defensively. And, you know, you'll notice, at least I have, that Adley has been DHing a little bit more often, you know. So I think it's because James McCann is a really good defensive catcher and he calls a really good game behind the plate. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes on moving forward. So Dean Kremer, like I said, held it down. Cionel Perez, he could have got out of an inning. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Kind of made things interesting. Yennier Cano goes a third, and then Felix Bautista works through a bunch of traffic again. He did throw 23 pitches, but he ends up getting the save despite allowing an earned run. We'll get to that when we get to the play-by-play. But before we get to that play-by-play, once again, I just want to say what a big spot this was. You're down 0-2. You should have won the first game. The second game, you kind of let it get away from you to where you couldn't make a push. And then the third game, you're on top the entire time, and it almost looked like it was going to be possibly just like game one. And you know what? The Birds made it happen. The Birds made it happen, and you see some growth, you see some maturity, you see some perseverance. These are all things that we want to see out of this young ball club against an experienced ball club when we go down this stretch run, when we get closer to playoff time. So that was extremely encouraging to see. Now, let's get into the play-by-play. So, top half of the first, like I said, you asked Dean Kremer to take that hill and go win this baseball game for you. And what does he do but come in and give you 7 innings of 2-run baseball? You got to love it. But top half of the first, he had a lot of good defense behind him as well. And it kind of set the pace. The first batter smoked one down the left field line, and Ramon Urias just completely laid out to the third base side and snagged it and then threw it from his knees and gunned this guy out at first base. I mean, the guy is a stinking gold glover. He is just a phenomenal. He's so good at third base, man. I mean, you really want him in there as much as is possible because of his stinking glove. And with Gunnar playing short now, you know, I like Ramon a lot at third base, man. He's just a stinking vacuum, and he made an absolute great play throwing out Altuve from his knees. And then Kremer ends up working through the rest of that inning. Bottom half, Adley Rutschman in a big spot trying to give the Birds a little firepower, if you will, trying to get those engines started. What does he do except go oppo right over that left field wall, almost taking out Mr. Splash, and he just hits an absolute stinking bomb to lead the game off 1-0, and it set the tone for the entire baseball game. So, man, Adley coming up big, dude. Just what a stinking weapon in that leadoff spot. He's been so good. It'll be really interesting, you know, what happens when Cedric Mullins gets back. I'm sure that Adley will probably stay there right now just because his on-base percentage is so good until Ced kind of works back in, because you do like that speed out there in that number 1 spot, and maybe Adley drops down to the 2. But right now, man, he is just doing a phenomenal job in that leadoff spot. Just hats off to stinking Adley starting a game like that. So top half of the second, Yinier Diaz leads off the top with a solo shot himself to knot it up at 1. And then the Birds go 1, 2, 3 in the bottom half of the second. In the top half of the third inning, this is one of those places where Kremer kind of works through some traffic. Altuve hits a 1-out double, and then a ground ball moves Altuve to third with 2 outs before Alvarez works a walk himself, and it puts runners at the corners with 2 outs. And then, you know, Tucker comes up, which has just plagued us this entire series already. He's got the grand slam. He had the first inning shot last night, and then, you know, like, oh my goodness, this guy, we can't get him out. Well, he comes up, and what does Kremer do? He strikes him out, keeping the game knotted at 1. That was a real big spot and one of those jams that Stinkin' Dean was able to work out of. Now, the bottom half of the third, this is where Ramon leads off with a stinking triple off the top of the right center field wall, and he legs it out and just completely stinking jets all the way to stinking third, safe. He kind of landed a little funny, but what a big spot to lead off the inning with that triple. And then James McCann is able to line drive a single right back up the middle, right from whence it came, because it almost stinking took Brown's head off to give the Birds a 2-1 lead. And then I think it was real weird because at that point, that was one of the first strike him out, throw him outs that the Birds got into. And it was just kind of like, what are we doing? But, you know, it ended up being no harm, no foul. The fourth inning, the Stros and the Birds, they both go 1, 2, 3. And then Kremer works into some traffic after getting the first 2 outs. Altuve and Bregman have back-to-back singles before Alvarez hits an absolute scorcher to Adam Frazier. And I mean, once again, another huge defensive play. He lays out, snags a 1-hopper to his glove side, and then he throws him out to preserve the 2-1 lead. The O's defense at that point had been absolutely stinking stellar. And Dean Kremer needs to get a couple of guys some steak dinners tonight because they did great behind him. In the 6th inning, Dean works around a 2-out walk, and he strikes out Dubon to get out of the inning. And then James McCann leads off the bottom half with a double into right. He was initially called out. I mean, that guy comes laboring around first. He's not the world's greatest runner, if you will. And he was initially called out, even though the tag was behind him, but he clearly got into the bag before the shortstop second baseman tagged the back of his knee, if you will. So it was overturned. It was a great challenge by Brandon Hyde, and it ended up being a big spot because the very next batter, Adley Rutschman, singled McCann in to give the Birds that 3-1 lead. So great challenge. Great to see that he was actually safe, and it ended up being a big run for the Birds as they won by 1. So 7th inning, Kremer works through 2 quick outs before giving up a solo shot to Altuve to cut the O's lead 3-2, and then he strikes out Bregman to get out of the inning with a 3-2 lead. So when Kremer left the game after 7, it's 3-2 Baltimore Orioles. Tip of the cap once again. Great spot for Dean Kremer. Bottom half of the inning, okay, O'Hearn leads off the bottom half with a 2-bagger off the center field wall. Then Ryan Mountcastle hits an absolute stinking frozen rope just to the right of the extended field wall for a 2-run shot to extend the O's lead 5-2. And when I say that thing was a line drive, it was a stinking line drive that almost took out the cameraman. Just absolutely got a hold of that ball. It wasn't the 472-footer that he hit a couple of days ago, but, man, he got a hold of that stinking ball, and it provided much-needed insurance for the Birds. 5-2. So CNL comes in the 8th inning and strikes out Alvarez before giving up a single to Tucker. He then gets Diaz to fly out, and then Singleton reaches on a missed catch error by CNL Perez as basically Singleton hit a little dribbler down to first base where Ryan Mountcastle picks it up, gives a perfect feed to CNL as he's trying to cover the bag, and as the ball is about 2 feet away, he takes his eyes off of it. He doesn't try to glove it. He tries to barehand it, takes his eyes off, and looks down at the bag and misses the stinking baseball. So, the Birds don't get out of the inning. CNL gets the hook. Yinyer comes in, gives up a bloop single to right, and that cuts the lead to 5-3 before Yinyer is able to get Jeremy Pena to chase one well out of the stinking zone. I mean, I don't know why in the world he swung at that pitch, but he did. And it ends the inning, but the lead is cut to 5-3. Birds go 1-2-3 in the bottom half of the 8th, and then comes King Felix for redemption, or kind of, sort of. So Felix comes in, he gets the first hitter to pop out to James McCann in foul territory. Great stinging job. But then one of the guys that's been stinging, plaguing us the entire series, Jose Altuve, just, does what he does. Stinger doubles off the left field wall just over the outstretched arms of Austin Hayes. And Austin Hayes did everything that he could to catch that ball, and it was just out of his reach. So Altuve's on second. He ends up moving up to third on a pass ball by Felix Bautista. And then Bautista walks Bregman for runners on the stinking corners. Alvarez pops out to McCann, and there's 2 outs with runners on the corners, and the Birds are up 5-3. And guess who steps up to the plate? It's almost like you couldn't script it any better than this. Tucker, the very guy that hit the grand slam in Game 1 to give the Astros a come-from-behind victory. Well, Felix is going to get his opportunity for some redemption. And he does kind of at the end of the story, but not so much as far as Tucker is concerned, if you will, because Tucker walked. So he ends up walking Tucker. The bases are now juiced. And then the next batter, Diaz, hits an absolute screamer in the hole between short and third. And Ramon almost makes another stinking fantastic play by coming up with that baseball. And even though he wasn't able to come up with that baseball, the fact that he was able to knock it down actually preserved the game for the Birds, because if that ball gets in the hole, there's probably going to be a play at the plate. And yes, Austin Hayes is out there in left field. He's got a stinking cannon for an arm, but they're probably going to send that guy at second and force a good throw. So the fact that Ramon was able to knock that ball down was stinking huge. And once again, the guy is a stinking vacuum cleaner over there at third. So he knocks it down. The Astros only can score one. It's 5-4. And then Singleton comes up, who was already in the lineup. He was playing first base. You got the lefty-righty matchup. And Singleton's only batting .094. And they chose to keep him in the ball game. And what does Singleton do but pop out? Thank the Lord. He popped out, preserving the win for the Baltimore Orioles. And like I said, man, this is a great baseball game for the Baltimore Orioles. You know, to come back from being down 0-2 in the series, to recognize the importance of this baseball game in your own house, for the defending world champions to be coming back and trying to do what they did in game one, and they were able to find a way to shut it down. That's a big game, man. There's a lot of growth, maturity, perseverance, all these characteristics that we want to see from these young Orioles as we move into the stretch run and then in towards the postseason, hopefully. So it was a great stinking game for the Baltimore Orioles. You can't say enough about them keeping the streak alive. That makes it 76 straight series, Birdland, that the Baltimore Orioles have not been swept. And you can't ask for a better way to end the homestand, if you will, than a W against the defending world champions. Now we move into, 9 games of baseball on the West Coast. I'm personally not looking forward to it because that just means late ball games. And that means I got to find a way to do these videos in a timely manner and actually still get some sleep. So it's going to be quite the next week for me, if you will. But we'll get through it. But like I said, man, how about them stinking Orioles, man? 5-4, Game 3 against the defending world champions, moves them to 71-44. And at the time that I'm making this video, it's 2-0. Tampa Bay is losing right now, so hopefully they'll still lose. But currently, the Baltimore Orioles have a 2.5 game lead in the AL East before they take their show out to the West Coast tomorrow. So, hey, clap it up, tip your cap. That's exactly what we want to see. We wanted to see them battle back. That's what they did. They got the win when they needed the win. And that's a good sign for things to come. So if you haven't already, please like, share, subscribe to this content. Hit that notification bell. It's going to let you know every time that I make a video about our Baltimore Orioles, which is after every baseball game. So make sure that you tune in every day when I talk about the ball game with the O's. Hey, great game, Birdland. Have a good night, and we will see you on the next one.